The ground trembled beneath Elder Anya's feet, an icy tremor that only she felt. In her world of silence, the growing vibration was a cry of warning. Gigantic polar bears, hungry and desperate, were advancing on the sleeping village. The acrid scent of the predator tore through the freezing air, and Anya knew that the lives of her people hung by a thread. No one else noticed. How would she, a deaf and time-worn woman, stop the approaching white fury without hearing the howls or the cries of panic? And what would she do to save her village's last hope? Anya had no ready answers, but her aged and wise heart knew that time was a luxury she didn't possess. In her mind, images flashed with the rapidity of a river thawing in spring, the sleeping faces of her grandchildren, the tired smile of the young widow who depended on dried fish to feed her children, the fragility of each life in that isolated community. The responsibility weighed like the layers of reindeer hide that protected her from the cold, but it did not crush her. On the contrary, it ignited a silent flame within her, an urgency that propelled her. Her fingers, calloused by decades of work in the snow, fumbled along the wall of her yurt, searching for the birch staff that was her extension in the world. It was not merely a support for her tired body, but a conductor of vibrations, an amplifier of what the earth whispered. With it in hand, Anya felt the pulse of the ice beneath the village, an altered rhythm, denser, heavier. The bears were closer than she imagined. There was no time to awaken the others, to try to explain in gestures and signs the invisible danger approaching. They would not feel what she felt, would not understand the urgency without the visual or auditory proof she could not offer. Only immediate and silent action could save them. Her mind, a living archive of ancestral wisdom, began to devise a plan. She could not fight against the brute force of nature, but she could redirect it, deceive it. The icy environment, which seemed so relentless, was also her ally. The ice, the snow, the wind, everything could be molded, transformed into an invisible barrier, a trap of disorientation. The idea, born from generations of observation, was to use silence itself and vibrations to create an illusion, an echo that would confuse the hungry predators, guiding them away without a single confrontation. With slow yet purposeful movements, Anya put on her heavy fox fur coat, tightening the hood around her face. Her deep, piercing blue eyes scanned the yurt, resting for an instant on the image of her family, etched in her memory. An almost inaudible sigh escaped her lips, chapped by the cold. It was for them, always for them. She opened the yurt door with extreme care, each joint of her gloved fingers working to avoid the slightest sound. The polar night air enveloped her, an embrace of ice needles that burned exposed skin. The temperature was well below 70 degrees, a cold that stole breath and froze the soul. But Anya did not feel the cold as others did. She felt it as a presence, a force to be respected and utilized. Under the flickering light of the polar aurora, which painted the sky in emerald and sapphire hues, the village slept deeply, enveloped in a blanket of untouched snow. The yurt chimneys released faint smoke, signs of life that the hungry bears, with their keen sense of smell, would certainly detect. Anya knew that the scent of dried fish, stored in the center of the village, would be an irresistible invitation for the desperate animals. She moved like a shadow, her staff probing the frozen ground, searching for the fissures, the irregularities in the ice that would be key points in her plan. With each step, she felt the vibrations through the staff and her feet like a tactile map of the approaching danger. The mother bear's heart beat strongly, not with rage, but with a desperate hunger, a primal urgency to protect her cubs. Anya understood this hunger, this need for survival. Her trap would not be one of pain, but of deception, of redirection. She would use the environment itself, the sound amplified by the ice, the echoes distorted by snow formations, to create an illusion of movement and presence, drawing them away from the village. With a nod of her head, she headed to the outskirts of the village, where the ice formations were more prominent, a natural labyrinth she knew as well as the lines on her own hands. There, under the cloak of the polar night, Anya began her silent work, the hope of her people resting on her fragile, yet unwavering shoulders. Anya moved with the precision of one who dances with the earth itself, each step calculated not to disturb the village's sleep. Her gloved fingers, despite her age, were agile, digging into the compact snow and ice with the tip of her staff, creating strategic grooves and small craters. She could not hear the whistle of the wind, but she felt its force against her face, and she knew how it would behave when encountering the obstacles she was creating. The plan was simple in its ancestral genius: to use the air currents and ice formations to amplify and distort the echoes, creating a symphony of confusing vibrations that would disorient the bears, making them believe that the danger was in another direction, or that the village was an unattainable labyrinth. She probed the ice with her palm, feeling the density, temperature, how the vibrations propagated. Each natural fissure was a potential channel, each mound of snow a mirror of echoes. With her staff, she tapped lightly on specific points, feeling the return of the vibration through the wood, like a conductor assessing the acoustics of a hall. It was arduous work, under the biting cold that seemed to want to freeze her very thoughts, but Anya worked with an almost meditative concentration. Her blue eyes, beneath the tight hood, gleamed with unwavering determination, reflecting the distant lights of the polar aurora. The sleeping village was a peaceful contrast to Anya's feverish urgency. Inside the yurts, families dreamed of the warmth of the fire and the promise of a new day, ignoring the silent battle being waged at the edges of their world. Her grandchildren in particular were the image that kept Anya moving. She saw them in her mind, their innocent faces and the trust they placed in her, the elder who had always guided them. The responsibility was a heavy burden, but also an inexhaustible source of strength. As she worked, Anya felt the bear's vibrations intensify. It was no longer a distant tremor, but a closer, stronger pulse, laden with a hunger she could almost taste in the icy air. The mother bear was desperate, and this intensity was palpable to Anya, who understood the primal language of survival. She quickened her pace, her movements becoming faster, more urgent. Small blocks of ice were stacked, forming subtle barriers, while the snow was shaped into ramps and valleys that would redirect the wind, and with it, the echoes. Time was her cruelest enemy. With each passing minute, the bears approached, drawn by the scent of dried fish escaping from the yurt crevices. Anya imagined the mother bear, with her hungry cubs by her side, sniffing the air, her eyes fixed on the promise of food. The trap needed to be perfect, flawless, so that the redirection would be effective and without violence. The lives of her people depended on that illusion, on that silent dance with the environment. With a final effort, she planted her staff at a key point, a small mound of ice that would serve as the epicenter of disorientation. Her muscles screamed, but she ignored them. The work was almost complete. Exhausted, but with her heart beating strongly with hope, Anya felt the mother bear's vibrations, now just a few meters away, about to enter the complex labyrinth of deceptions she had created. An icy shiver ran down her spine, not from fear, but from a tense anticipation. The moment of truth was upon them. The moment of truth was upon them. Anya felt the colossal mass of the mother bear just steps away, a vibrational presence that reverberated in her bones, followed by the quick, fragile tremors of the cubs, adding a layer of urgency to the maternal despair. The bear sniffed the air, and Anya could almost feel the wave of dried fish scent that drew her in, a promise of life amidst white death. Her eyes, accustomed to the gloom, discerned a colossal shadow emerging from the icy mist. The mother bear, A mountain of white fur was there. Dark eyes fixed in the direction of the village, her body tense with hunger and a primal protective instinct. Anya took a deep breath, icy air that burned her lungs. It was now. With a precise and silent movement, she activated the final mechanism of her trap. There were no buttons or levers, just a subtle adjustment in one of the ice formations she had carefully sculpted. By pushing a block of snow into a specific position, she altered the wind flow, creating unexpected resonance. The vibrations, previously faint, suddenly amplified, ricocheting off the ice and snow barriers, creating a tactile cacophony, a chorus of distorted echoes that seemed to come from all directions at once. The mother bear stopped abruptly. Anya felt her confusion, a tremor of uncertainty that spread across the ice. The animal turned her head, sniffing and trying to locate the strange vibrations. Her cubs, startled, huddled against her legs. The disorientation trap was working. The vibrations created the illusion of multiple dangers and erratic movements, drawing the bear away from the direct path to the village. She did not understand what was happening, only that the path ahead was not safe. Anya watched, motionless, her heart beating a silent, frantic rhythm. But then, a sensation struck her with the force of a blow. A dry, deep crack coming from below. The ice beneath her feet, weakened by the cold and weight, gave way. A long, irregular fissure formed, spreading like a spider web. Anya felt the ground tilt dangerously, her precarious balance threatening to collapse. The risk was immense. If she fell or if the ice broke, her stratagem would be revealed. The bear, alerted by her movement or by the vibrations, could attack, and all effort would be in vain. For an instant, panic threatened to overwhelm her. The sleeping faces of her grandchildren flashed in her mind, a vivid reminder of what was at stake. But Anya, forged in decades of adversity, did not allow herself to yield. With a surprising reflex, she planted her staff into the solid ice beside the fissure, using it as a lever. Her aged yet strong body propelled itself backward, moving away from the imminent danger. She regained her composure, muscles tense, face etched with strain, but her eyes still burned with the same determination. The bear, still disoriented by the vibrations, took a hesitant step backward, moving away from the trap area. Anya seized the moment. With a final act of pure resilience, she adjusted a mound of snow, directing the vibrations to a new route, away from the village, into the white, desolate expanse of ice. The bear, following her instinct and sensory confusion, turned. Her cubs followed her, small white dots disappearing into the darkness. Anya remained there, watching the shadows recede until the vibrations diminished and finally disappeared. Silence returned, deeper and heavier, but now laden with immense relief. Her body trembled, not from cold, but from exhaustion and adrenaline. She had succeeded. Without a word, without confrontation, she had saved her village. The sun began to peek over the horizon, painting the sky with shades of pink and gold. A new day dawned over Yakutia, a day that almost wouldn't have come for her people. As the sun rose, casting a soft light over the frozen landscape, Anya felt the weight of every year on her shoulders. Her muscles ached, her bones protested, but a deep peace settled in her heart. The village, now bathed in pale light, seemed more vulnerable and at the same time more precious. She looked at the yurts, imagining her grandchildren waking, the young widow preparing morning tea. Life would continue thanks to her silent intervention. With slow and hesitant steps, she began the journey back, the birch staff still firm in her hands, now a support for her tired body, no longer an instrument of silent war. The air, though still icy, seemed less biting with the promise of day. The scent of the bears, once intense and threatening, had diminished, but a faint trace still lingered, a subtle reminder of the danger that had almost swallowed them. As she approached the outskirts of the village, Anya saw the first denser smoke rising from a chimney, and soon after, a yurt door opened. It was Misha, her eldest grandson, 10 years old and his eyes still swollen with sleep, coming out to fetch more firewood. He saw her, standing there, pale and exhausted, and his face contorted in confusion. Misha ran to her, his small feet sinking into the fresh snow. He couldn't understand what his grandmother was doing there so early, her face etched with weariness. His brown eyes, full of concern, swept over Anya's face, then over the trail of trampled snow and disturbed ice that stretched out from the village. He pointed to the trail, then to his nose, indicating the faint scent that he, with his childlike, keen sense of smell, was beginning to perceive. Anya smiled faintly, a smile that didn't reach her tired eyes, and made a gesture with her hand, indicating far away. All clear. The other villagers began to emerge from their yurts, drawn by the activity and the growing light. The young widow, Lyra, came out with her small child in her arms, and her eyes widened upon seeing Anya so exhausted and the unusual trail in the snow. A murmur of voices began to spread, silent questions exchanged among neighbors. They could not hear what Anya had felt, but they could see the marks of her work, the disturbed ice, the strangely shaped snow, and the trail of heavy paw prints leading away from the village. Gradually, understanding began to settle in. There were no shouts, no panic, no devastation that the bear's hunger could have caused. There was only the elder, exhausted but standing, and the stillness of the intact village. Lyra, with her child still sleeping in her arms, approached Anya and, with a gesture of affection, touched her shoulder. Her eyes, filled with unshed tears, expressed a gratitude that needed no words. She knew in her heart that Anya had done something extraordinary. The entire village gathered, not in alarm, but in a circle of silent respect and admiration. They could not comprehend the complexity of the vibration trap, but they understood the danger that had been averted and the courage of Elder Anya. No one needed verbal explanations. The dawn brought not only light, but the certainty that the ancestral wisdom, altruism, and resilience of a deaf woman had once again ensured everyone's survival. That day, more than any other, would be a silent testament to the true strength of the human spirit. The circle of silent admiration deepened. Lyra, with her child still nestled in her arms, stepped forward, her eyes fixed on Anya's. There was no need for words. The gentle touch on her shoulder, the firmness of Lyra's hand, conveyed a deep gratitude that echoed in the elder's soul. Anya felt the warmth of that contact, a balm for the weariness that now overwhelmed her. She nodded slightly, a gesture Lyra understood as an acceptance of that affection. Misha, the eldest grandson, dropped the firewood and ran to his grandmother's side. His brown eyes, previously heavy with sleep, now shone with a mix of curiosity and newfound respect. He took Anya's gloved hand, small compared to his own, and squeezed it with an unusual tenderness for a boy. He could not know the details of his grandmother's plan, nor the tension she had endured, but he felt the aura of heroism that enveloped her. In his childlike mind, his grandmother had faced the invisible danger and driven it away, like the stories of the great hunters he so admired. The other villagers, previously standing in a semicircle, began to move. A younger man, Ivan, approached with a carefully folded reindeer hide blanket and placed it over Anya's shoulders. The gesture was accompanied by others who offered hot tea in wooden gourds, or simply approached to touch her arm, their faces expressing a reverence that went beyond gratitude. They could not hear the bears, but the absence of danger and Anya's exhausted presence were sufficient proof of what had happened. Anya felt the warmth of the blanket and the comforting scent of herbal tea. Every fiber of her body cried out for rest, but her heart warmed with that display of care. She looked at each face, at the wrinkles of worry that softened into relief, at the eyes that saw her not just as the deaf elder, but as the silent guardian of their lives. That was why she had acted. It was for this community, for this extended family, that she had defied the cold and danger. The sun continued its slow ascent, painting the sky with vibrant colors, and the light clearly revealed the marks of Anya's work. The ice and snow formations, once just strange mounds, now seemed like monuments to a silent battle. Some of the younger men, instigated by curiosity and the desire to understand, began to examine the grooves and barriers Anya had created. They probed the ice, feeling the irregularities, trying to decipher the enigma of the vibration trap. Lyra, still by Anya's side, noticed the elder's gaze following the men. She knew Anya could not explain with words, but Lyra, with her keen intuition, felt that the elder wished them to understand. She knelt down, and with her fingers drew a simple diagram in the snow, indicating the path the bears would have taken and how the barriers had diverted them. It was an attempt to translate Anya's silence into something others could see and perhaps feel. Misha, observing his mother, began to imitate her gestures, pointing to the trail of the bear's paw prints leading away and to the ice formations. He was learning, not just about his grandmother's wisdom, but about the importance of observing, of feeling the environment, of going beyond what ears could perceive. That day was not just about survival, but about the transmission of ancestral knowledge, a legacy of resilience that Anya, in her silence, had planted in the hearts of her people. Anya, seeing the interaction, felt a solitary tear roll down her wrinkled cheek, freezing instantly. It was not from sadness, but from deep joy and hope. The seed had been planted. The human connection, as vital as the warmth of fire, shone brighter than the morning sun. The village, united by danger and gratitude, was stronger than ever, ready to face future challenges, with Anya's silent wisdom guiding their steps. The village, united by danger and gratitude, was stronger, ready for future challenges, with Anya's silent wisdom. Under the cold sun that illuminated the ice formations, the initial euphoria gave way to concern. The immediate danger had passed, but the memory of the bear's hunger still lingered like an icy mist. Lyra, with her sleeping child in her arms, felt a shiver. Her eyes, previously grateful, now reflected anxiety. She looked at Anya, at the tracks in the snow, and at the modest piles of dried fish, the village's last hope. What if the bears returned, or other hungry animals? Anya's trap had saved the day, but not the root of the problem. The food scarcity that plagued Yakutia with unprecedented ferocity. A murmur of low voices spread among the villagers. They were not shouts of panic, but whispers of fear, of uncertainty. They pointed to the marks in the snow, to the signs that hunger was becoming a more relentless enemy than winter itself. Ivan, the young hunter, approached Lyra, his face grave. He gestured to the white expanse, indicating that game was becoming increasingly scarce, animals migrating from the extreme cold. Anya felt the change in the atmosphere, the subtle vibration of unease. She saw the worry in Lyra's eyes, the tension in Ivan's shoulders. This was the true challenge, deeper and more persistent than the threat of the bears. The village had been saved from an attack, but not from the hunger that lurked in the shadows. Misha, still holding his grandmother's hand, felt the change in the adult's mood. He looked at Anya, then at Lyra, trying to decipher the gravity. He didn't understand words, but he felt the weight of concern. Anya squeezed her grandson's hand, a gesture of comfort and strength. She knew she needed to act again, not with an ice trap, but with the wisdom of a lifetime in Yakutia. The village elders, in a circle, discussed in low voices. Their wrinkled faces expressed apprehension. Boris, with a white beard, gestured north to inhospitable lands, suggesting a desperate hunting expedition. Others shook their heads, fearing that such a journey would be a death sentence. Lyra, with her child in her arms, stepped forward, her voice soft yet determined. She looked at Anya, seeking the strength the elder radiated. Anya, feeling the intensity of Lyra's emotion, saw the young widow point to the yurts, the children, and the distant horizon, to a place where life would be less cruel. The proposal, not yet verbalized, was a radical change, a break from tradition, to leave the village, seek a new home, or send part of the community in search of resources. It was an unexpected turning point, the revelation that the true battle was just beginning, not against a predator, but against destiny itself. Anya closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the impending decision. She had saved the village from immediate danger, but the long-term survival of her people was at stake, demanding courage that challenged not only the cold, but the very essence of their home. The morning silence, once a relief, now amplified the dilemma. Anya closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the impending decision. She had saved the village from immediate danger, but the long-term survival of her people was at stake, demanding courage that challenged not only the cold, but the very essence of their home. The morning silence, once a relief, now amplified the dilemma. She opened her eyes, facing Lyra, whose face, previously lit by gratitude, now bore the shadow of a painful determination. Lyra did not speak, but her eyes, fixed on Anya's, pleaded for understanding, for support. The proposal to leave the ancestral village, to break with generations of history and tradition, was an abyss of uncertainties. The elders, previously speaking in low voices, now fell silent, sensing the gravity. Boris, the oldest after Anya, shook his head slowly, his wrinkles deepening. He gestured to the frozen earth, to the ground where their ancestors rested, a gesture that spoke of deep roots, of an unbreakable connection to that place. For him, leaving was to die a little, to abandon their very identity, a betrayal of who they had always been. Ivan, the young hunter, who had examined Anya's ice formations with curiosity, now looked at the horizon, his expression divided between fear of the unknown and hope for an easier life. He loved his village, but hunger was a silent enemy that gnawed at the soul. His eyes met Lyra's. Anya felt the subtle vibration of a tacit alliance among the younger ones, those with more to lose and perhaps more to gain from the change. Misha, still holding Anya's hand, felt the tension in the air. His brown eyes, accustomed to deciphering his grandmother's gestures, moved from one face to another, trying to understand the silent storm brewing. He squeezed Anya's hand more tightly, seeking reassurance. The elder, feeling her grandson's small tremor, stroked his head, conveying a calm she herself struggled to maintain. Lyra took a step forward, her sleeping child in her arms, a living symbol of fragility and hope. She could not hear Anya's silence, but she felt the depth of her wisdom. With a broad gesture, she pointed to the dried fish, to the children playing near the yurts, and then to the inhospitable vastness that surrounded them. Her message was clear. The village could no longer sustain everyone. The choice was not between staying or going, but between living or perishing. Anya closed her eyes again. In her mind, she saw the generations that had prospered there, the winters overcome, the stories told around the fire. But she also saw the hungry faces, the empty eyes, the exhaustion that marked each harsher winter. Tradition was a powerful bond, but life was more. She felt the vibrations of the earth beneath her feet, the same land that now refused to give them sustenance. The dilemma was excruciating. Abandoning home was immense pain. Remaining meant risking extinction. Anya opened her eyes, and her gaze met Lyra's, a young woman who, despite the pain, dared to dream of a future. The elder knew that ancestral wisdom was not just about preserving the past, but finding new paths to survival, even if it meant challenging everything they knew. The decision would not be easy, but it was imperative, and Anya, the silent guardian, felt the weight of guiding her people through yet another valley of uncertainties. True strength, she thought, lay in adapting, reinventing oneself, honoring the past while embracing the future, however daunting it might be. Anya opened her eyes, facing Lyra, whose face bore a painful determination. The elder knew that ancestral wisdom demanded new paths to survival, challenging the known. The decision would not be easy, but it was imperative. Anya, silent guardian, felt the weight of guiding her people. True strength, she thought, lay in adapting, reinventing oneself, honoring the past while embracing an uncertain future. With a slow gesture, Anya touched Lyra's face. The young woman's skin was cold, but her eyes burned with hope and despair. Lyra, understanding the touch as a sign that Anya heard her, held the elder's hand. A connection that transcended hearing, forged in the harshness of life and the urgency of the moment. Boris, the white-bearded elder, watched the scene with apprehension. He knew that Anya's decision would shape the destiny of her people. With a heavy sigh, he approached, his steps slow in the snow, and touched the ice beneath his feet, a silent reminder of the ancestral land. Anya felt Boris's touch and understood the message. The land was sacred, but the lives of little Misha and the others were even more so. She looked at Boris, and in his eyes he saw deep pain, but also an unwavering resolve. Misha, still clinging to Anya's hand, perceived the gravity. He felt the tension in the air. He squeezed his grandmother's hand more tightly, seeking to protect her. Ivan, the young hunter, approached, shoulders slumped. He looked at Lyra, at her sleeping child, and then at Anya. Hunger was real, the hunt an illusion. Leaving, however painful, seemed the only way out. Anya closed her eyes, focusing on the vibrations of the earth and wind, seeking an answer from intuition. She felt the biting cold, the scent of snow, the promise of a new day that brought the need for a new journey. When she opened her eyes, her gaze was serene and firm. She turned to Lyra and with a slow, clear gesture pointed north to the white expanse. Then she made a motion with her hand as if opening a path, and then touched her own heart, then Lyra's and Misha's. The message was clear. Yes, they would go. Not all, but a part. The younger ones, those who carried the future. It would be an expedition, a quest for hope, guided by necessity and faith. Boris shook his head, at first in disbelief, but then in understanding of Anya's determination. Ivan felt relief and dread, Lyra gratitude and a renewed breath of courage. The elder had heard their plea. With a final gesture, Anya pointed to the ice formation she had built. They would be a symbol that even in the most inhospitable environment, with wisdom and unity, it was possible to shape destiny and open new paths. The village was not abandoning its roots, but planting new seeds of hope in unknown soil. The journey would be long and arduous, but the decision had been made, and a new vibration of purpose began to spread. The new vibration of purpose, once a whisper, now resonated through the hearts of the village. Anya's decision, though silent, had become a beacon in the darkness of uncertainty. Lyra, with her child still sleeping in her arms, felt a mix of relief and dread. Hope danced in her eyes, but the fear of the unknown tightened her chest. She looked at Anya, a silent plea for guidance in her gaze. The elder, feeling the turbulence of emotions in the young woman, gently stroked Lyra's face. With a gesture, she indicated that preparation would begin immediately. There was no time to lose. Winter did not wait for laments or hesitations. Misha, letting go of his grandmother's hand, ran to Lyra, as if to protect her. His curious eyes watched the adults, trying to understand the gravity of the task that lay ahead. Boris, the white-bearded elder, who had initially been reluctant, now approached Anya with an expression of resignation and respect. He knew that Anya's wisdom transcended sight and hearing. With a nod of his head, He indicated that he would gather the other elders to discuss the logistical details of the departure. Tradition would be honored, even if the path was new. Ivan, the young hunter, felt a knot in his stomach. He would be one of those who would leave. The idea of leaving the village, of venturing into unknown lands, was at once terrifying and exciting. He looked at Lyra, at her child, and a new determination ignited in his chest. He was not seeking only for himself, but a future for all of them. The following hours were filled with feverish, yet organized activity. The yurts were opened to the pale morning light, and the villagers began to prepare the sleds, inspect animal hides for travel clothes, and ration the few remaining foods. Anya, sitting on an ice bench near the central fire, observed everything with her wise eyes. She could not hear the hum of voices, but she felt the energy, the collaboration, the unity of her people. With precise gestures, Anya began to guide the preparations. She indicated that the thickest hides should be used for the sleds to protect supplies from the extreme cold. She pointed to the dried herbs stored in leather pouches, insisting they be taken for medicinal teas. Her wrinkled fingers traced an imaginary map of the north on the ground, showing the reference points she knew from ancient stories and from her own readings of the earth's vibrations. Lyra, attentive to Anya's every movement, translated her gestures to the others, ensuring that the elders' wisdom was understood. She felt the responsibility of being the bridge between Anya's silence and the community's voice. Misha, by his grandmother's side, helped separate the small wooden gourds, feeling like an important part of that great effort. The decision of who would depart was made based on strength, youth, and hunting ability. Ivan and some other young people, including Lyra, would be the vanguard. Families with very young children or the frailer elders would remain in the village, awaiting their return or news. The separation would be painful, but necessary for everyone's survival. In the late afternoon, the sleds were almost ready, loaded with essentials. The sun, already low on the horizon, painted the sky with shades of purple and deep blue. A silent sadness hung in the air, mixed with renewed courage. The village would gather for a last meal together before the expedition departed at dawn. Anya, observing the tired but determined faces, felt a lump in her throat. She had guided her people through many winters, but this one was different. This winter demanded more than endurance. It demanded faith in the unknown. She knew that the journey would be long and dangerous, but hope, like a flickering flame in the icy wind, ignited in each heart. True strength lay not in avoiding the challenge, but in embracing it, with the certainty that, together, they could overcome any adversity. The village, now more than ever, was a single body, pulsating with the same hope and the same fear, ready to face whatever destiny held for them. The first lights of a new dawn painted the sky a pale grey, announcing the departure. A heavy silence, different from the relief of the previous night, hung over the village. It was not the silence of peace, but of farewell, laden with heavy hearts and tear-filled eyes. The sleds, laden with essentials, waited in the snow, like vessels for a sea of ice. Anya, wrapped in her heavy reindeer hide, stood beside Lyra, whose eyes, swollen from a sleepless night, struggled to maintain composure. Misha, his face pressed against his mother's leg, looked at his grandmother, and the sleds with curiosity and a sadness he did not comprehend. The elder felt every vibration, the tremor in the hands of those departing, the warmth of the embraces, the mute echo of tears that could not be heard, but were felt. Boris, the white-bearded elder, approached Anya. His eyes, which had seen countless winters, were filled with melancholy. He touched the elder's shoulder, a gesture of respect and shared pain. In her wrinkled face, Anya read the concern for the young ones venturing into the unknown and the resignation of remaining, guarding the roots. She nodded, conveying a silent strength that seemed to calm the old man's soul. Ivan, the young hunter who would lead the expedition, knelt before Anya. His eyes, once adventurous, now showed the gravity of responsibility. He took the elder's gloved hands and squeezed them, seeking a blessing, her wisdom. Anya looked at him, and in her gaze, Ivan saw approval and a reminder of strength in unity and resilience. She touched his chest, a gesture that meant courage, and then pointed north to the path he would follow with faith. Lyra bent down to hug Misha tightly, kissing his hair. The boy, feeling the urgency of farewell, clung to his mother, his hands clutching her clothes. Lyra, with a lump in her throat, handed him to Lena, a friend whose eyes promised care. Misha's silent cry, which Anya felt as a tremor, broke the elder's heart. It was the price of survival, the pain of separation, a necessary sacrifice. With a last look at Anya, Lyra climbed onto the sled. Her eyes met the elder's. A silent promise was exchanged. Hope would be kept alive, no matter the journey. Ivan, with a nod to those who remained, gave the signal. The dogs pulled the sleds, and the caravan began to move slowly, its tracks opening in the virgin snow. The entire village watched. In reverent silence, the sleds diminish in the white expanse. Anya remained motionless, feeling the vibrations of the sleds receding, becoming fainter and fainter until they disappeared. The absence of those vibrations left a void in her chest, an echo of the life departing. She knew that the true challenge was just beginning, for those who left and for those who stayed. The village, now divided, would need even greater strength to overcome the distance and uncertainty. The human connection, tested by separation, would be the invisible thread that held them together, the promise of a reunion, the flame of hope amidst Yakutia's relentless ice. The journey had begun, the proof of a people's resilience. The journey had begun, the proof of a people's resilience. The first days of the expedition were a brutal test of endurance, each dawn bringing with it the promise of more cold and more exhaustion. The icy wind whipped their faces, turning the snow into sharp needles that stung exposed skin, penetrating the thickest layers of clothing. Lyra, her heart heavy with longing for Misha, pulled her sled with a strength she didn't know she possessed, her muscles burning beneath the heavy reindeer hides. Ivan, ahead, cleared a path with his shovel, his eyes fixed on the white horizon, searching for any sign of change, any promise of less hostile land. The food, rationed with almost painful strictness, barely warmed their empty stomachs, and with each step, hope dwindled, replaced by a growing exhaustion that weighed on each member of the caravan. In the village, Anya felt the absence of those who left as a hole in her chest, a gap in the tapestry of vibrations that composed her perception of the world. The earth's vibrations, once a constant murmur of life and movement, now seemed quieter, colder, as if Yakutia's very heart had slowed its beat. Misha, sensing his grandmother's unusual stillness, nestled closer to her, seeking the familiar comfort of her touch. Anya, with her eyes closed and her wrinkled hands clasped, tried to listen for the expedition's echo, but what reached her was only a growing emptiness, a sense of imminent danger that made her tremble. Far away, the expedition faced its greatest challenge. A relentless blizzard descended upon them, without warning, transforming the world into a white maelstrom of fury. The wind howled like 1,000 hungry wolves, a deafening chorus that swallowed every other sound, and the snow fell so densely that visibility was almost nil, reducing the world to a few meters of swirling ice. The dogs, exhausted and with bleeding paws, could barely pull the sleds, their barks muffled by the incessant roar of the storm. Lyra and Ivan, side by side, struggled to stay on their feet, their bodies trembling uncontrollably from cold and exhaustion. With each meter gained, fear seeped in, chilling the soul more deeply than the biting air itself. Suddenly, Ivan stopped abruptly, raising a hand to signal. Ahead of him, barely visible through the seemingly endless curtain of snow, rose an imposing formation, a dark blue ice wall, as tall as the village yurts, and which seemed to stretch for kilometers in both directions. It was a labyrinth of deep fissures and sharp peaks, impassable for the sleds and too dangerous to climb. Hope, already fragile as an ice leaf, shattered into 1,000 pieces. Lyra felt an icy despair invade her chest, squeezing it tightly. They were trapped, cornered between the storm and the impassable barrier. "We can't pass." Ivan gestured, his voice almost inaudible against the wind's fury. "It's too dangerous. The ice seems unstable. It could collapse at any moment." Lyra looked at the other members of the expedition, their faces pale and etched with extreme cold, their eyes reflecting the same paralyzing despair. Turning back meant returning to certain starvation in the village. Moving forward was to challenge death in an icy embrace. The decision weighed on her with the crushing force of an ice mountain, each second a torture. In the village, Anya opened her eyes abruptly, a silent cry of alarm in her soul. An intense vibration, a deep and painful tremor ran through the earth beneath her feet, making the ground seem to shake. It was not the sound of a bear, nor the cracking of local ice. It was something more distant, more desperate, a silent cry of anguish that seemed to come from winter's very heart, directly linked to her own. She knew with a certainty that transcended reason. Her children, the young ones who carried the hope of the village, were in mortal danger. Misha, startled by his grandmother's sudden tension, looked at her, his brown eyes wide with fright. Anya hugged him tightly, her own tremors mixing with the boys, a somber premonition. The connection, stronger than distance, deeper than silence, united her with Lyra and Ivan. The climax was not just the physical obstacle, but the pain of choice, the uncertainty of destiny. Lyra, with her eyes fixed on the ice wall that rose like a sentence, felt the weight of every life in her hands. The wind howled, and with it the cruel question, what to do? The village's survival, the hope for a future, hung by a slender thread, frozen in Yakutia's relentless heart. Anya, with Misha still nestled, closed her eyes, not for despair, but for deep concentration. The distant vibration filled her being, an urgent enigma. The earth was her book, and she read winter's cruelest pages. She felt the fury of the blizzard, and underneath an irregular pulse, the structure of the ice wall, fissures, tensions, points where wind and cold had created weaknesses. There was a place, a unique point, where the ice seemed thinner, more alive, as if an ancient current had carved a passage. Not an obvious crack, but a different resonance, a silent invitation from the earth itself, echoing in her spirit. Far away, Lyra felt despair grow, but something subtle changed. A vibration, distinct from the storm's chaos, began to pulse beneath her feet. Faint at first, then more insistent and rhythmic. It was a rhythm, a heartbeat coming from the ice wall. She looked at Ivan, eyes wide with surprise and faint hope. "Do you feel that?" She gestured urgently. Ivan shook his head, confused, but Lyra's determination made him stop. She knelt in the snow, gloved hand on the ice, concentrating. The vibration became clear, a silent path unfolding in her mind, as if Anya were guiding her, step by step, through the darkness. "This way," Lyra pointed with a conviction that surprised everyone. To a section of the wall that seemed impassable. The others hesitated, faces pale with exhaustion and fear, but the flame of hope in Lyra's eyes propelled them. Ivan, trusting Lyra's intuition, took his shovel. He tapped gently on the wall, following Lyra's fixed gaze. At first nothing, but then a different, hollower sound echoed. With each strike, the vibration Lyra felt intensified, confirming the path. Gradually, a narrow crevice revealed itself, camouflaged by snow and dark ice. It was a natural tunnel, tight and winding, with gleaming walls of light blue ice, yet passable. Lyra felt intense relief. Her legs almost gave way. They had found a way, a chance at life. With new energy, Ivan and the others widened the passage for the sleds. The blizzard still roared. But inside the crevice, the wind was less cruel, the cold less penetrating. One by one, sleds and expeditions squeezed through, hope reborn in every heart. In the village, Anya felt the change. The vibration of anguish diminished, replaced by a smooth, constant flow, a murmur of relief that warmed her soul. It was the echo of triumph, of her people's resilience. She opened her eyes, a faint smile curving her wrinkled lips, a sign of deep peace. Misha, sensing the calm return, smiled back, happy with the serenity she conveyed. Boris, observing Anya with reverence, saw the serenity in her face and knew. Anya's silent wisdom had guided her people. The expedition was not in total safety. The journey was still long, but the impassable obstacle had been overcome. The human connection, invisible and unbreakable, had proven to be the most powerful force against Yakutia's relentless winter, a beacon of hope. The relief Lyra felt upon passing through the ice crevice was a balm for her exhausted soul. The tunnel, narrow and cold, was a bridge to hope. Behind her, Ivan and the other members of the expedition emerged, their faces etched by the ordeal, but now lit by a new determination. The blizzard, though still present, seemed less threatening. The wind whispered, and the snow fell more softly. The expedition continued, guided by Lyra's intuition, who felt Anya's vibrations as a silent map in her heart. Days followed, and the landscape began to subtly change. The ice formations became less hostile, and signs of animal life, previously scarce, began to appear. One day, Ivan spotted fresh reindeer tracks in the snow. The hunt, once an illusion, became reality. With the silent coordination they had learned in adversity, the expedition's hunters, led by Ivan, managed to hunt down some reindeer. The fresh meat brought sustenance and renewed vigor to their spirits. Lyra, seeing the smoke from the fires and smelling the roasting meat, felt warm tears stream down her face. They were not tears of sadness, but of gratitude and relief. They had succeeded. They found not only food, but a more sheltered valley, with fish in a partially thawed river, an oasis in Yakutia's icy heart. In the village, Anya felt the change. The distant vibrations, previously laden with anguish, now pulsed with a rhythm of life, of success. She felt the joy, satiety, hope blossoming. Misha, who rarely left her side, played with other boys, laughter echoing in the yurt. Anya watched, a serene smile on her wrinkled lips. Boris, the elder, sat beside her, his eyes fixed on the horizon, as if he could see the young ones returning. He needed no words. Anya's peace was his certainty. The news of the expedition's success reached the village like a breath of fresh air. A hunter sent ahead returned with the good news and samples of the abundant game. Joy erupted, a chorus of shouts and embraces that Anya felt as a wave of warmth. The families who had remained knew that the wait had been worthwhile. Finally, under a pale sun that began to dip towards the west, the expedition's sleds appeared on the horizon. The entire village ran to meet them. Lyra descended from the sled, and Misha ran into her arms, a tight embrace that sealed the promise of a future. Ivan, exhausted yet victorious, was met with cheers. Anya, observing the reunion scene, felt the ground vibrate with the energy of her people. Lyra, with Misha in her arms, approached the elder. Her eyes, filled with tears and gratitude, met Anya's. She didn't need to say a word. The tight embrace, the gentle touch on the elder's face conveyed everything. Anya felt the strength of human connection, the proof that true wealth lay not in abundant game, but in the love and unity of her people. The village gathered for a feast like never before, plentiful meat, fresh fish, the warmth of the fires and hearts. Anya, sitting in her place of honor, felt every laugh, every song, every drumbeat. Her silent wisdom had saved everyone, not with force, but with the acuity of a mind that heard the inaudible. The journey had been long, the challenges immense, but they proved that even in Yakutia's icy heart, the resilience of the human spirit, faith in connection, and altruism could melt the most relentless of winters, paving the way for a new dawn, full of hope and gratitude. The village, stronger and more united, looked to the future with the certainty that, together, they could overcome anything. The vibrant and warm feast marked the beginning of a new era for the village. In the following days and weeks, abundance and security brought relief. But scarcity and the perilous journey left an indelible mark. The village was no longer the same. Its bonds were deeper, its understanding of interdependence sharper. Anya, in her place of honor, observed the changes. She felt the vibration of joy persist, but also that of reflection. The children, like Misha, played with renewed energy. Their games included stories of the expedition, of Lyra's and Ivan's courage, and of the elders' silent wisdom that guided them. Anya, with a gentle smile, felt the seed of resilience being planted in the new generations. Lyra, more than ever, was the bridge between Anya and the village. Her intuition, sharpened by experience on the ice, allowed her to understand the elders' gestures and glances with clarity. She became the main interpreter of Anya's messages, not only for practical needs, but for the transmission of ancestral knowledge about climate, animals, and the Earth's rhythms. Ivan, in turn, assumed a mature leadership role. His bravery in the hunt and determination in the expedition transformed him from a young adventurer into a pillar of strength and practical wisdom. He worked alongside Boris, learning the secrets of management and preparation for future winters, always with respect for Anya. The entire village began to value listening differently, not just hearing, but the perception of vibrations, subtle environmental cues and emotions. The story of how Anya felt the bears approaching and how Lyra felt the way through the ice became a living legend, a reminder that true wisdom transcends common senses. Preparations for the next winter began early, with unprecedented organization and collaboration. Fish and meat reserves were stored, hides treated, and yurts reinforced. There was no more room for carelessness, only vigilance and unity. The threat of hunger, though averted, had taught a valuable lesson. Preparation is an act of collective love and responsibility. Anya, sitting in the pale sun, felt the earth beneath her feet. The vibrations were now of peace, of harmonious work, of a community that had found its strength in adversity. She knew that winters in Yakutia would never be easy, that new challenges would arise, but now her people were ready. They had learned that true strength lay not in fighting against nature, but in understanding it, adapting to it, and above all, in trusting one another. Human connection, once a thread, was now a robust web, woven with experiences of fear, hope, and triumph. The village, a microcosm of resilience, proved that even in the world's iciest heart, the warmth of the human spirit could not only survive, but flourish, illuminating the path to a future where faith, altruism, and unity would be the unwavering pillars against any storm, an eternal testament to life.